Howdy, my name's Eric. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And to my new subscribers, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. So we're well into 2019 and it looks like the Yeehaw agenda is alive and well. A country album won Album of the Year at the Grammys. And with the recent success of Old Town Road by Lil Nas X has come a growing interest in country music and country aesthetics, even from people who aren't fans of country music. And a big factor in the success of Old Town Road has been its crossover success. Not only is it a hit on the pop charts, it combines elements of hip-hop music and country music to create something that hasn't been done so much before. There has been country rap, but no big hits for that subgenre like Old Town Road. And there are other success stories in people crossing over between country and different genres. Some high-profile artists who have done that are probably Carrie Underwood and more recently Maren Morris, whose feature on Zed's The Middle made her a country pop crossover star. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 10 songs from country artists that I think will appeal to fans of genres other than country, pop, rock, and maybe even R&B. I've also specifically chosen songs by artists who are in the country world. There are some other artists making country music or alt-country music who aren't really in a sort of coterie of country musicians. Most recently, Orville Peck, who fits mostly in the indie rock world, has made alt-country music. So I'm not going to have artists like him on this list. It's going to be mostly artists who have very much participated in the world of country, have worked in Nashville or places like that, and who have received varying levels of recognition for their country music, but whose particular songs I think can appeal to people who don't necessarily enjoy the style of country music and the particular subject matter. So these songs are going to have more, I think, universal subject matter and somewhat less of an acoustic twangy sound. All of these artists are at least pretty well known in the country world, but they might not have had the same crossover success as someone like my first artist, who is Kacey Musgraves. When I say ye, you say ha! And you've heard of her probably because she won Album of the Year at the Grammys this year. She's had a lot of crossover success. Her song Rainbow was sent to pop radio recently. But the song that I'm going to recommend to non-fans of country is going to be High Horse. It's definitely her poppiest song. It has disco influences and dance influences. It has a retro sound, but electronic flourishes. And I'd compare it in a way to Old Town Road because it uses some of the iconography of country music, particularly horses, of course, to drive home a more universal message. Whereas Old Town Road is more a song about confidence and perseverance, High Horse as a song is mostly an outlet for the listener's feelings about someone they may dislike or someone they find arrogant and hard to deal with, which of course isn't subject matter that's particular to country music, but the set of images and some of the aesthetic choices on the song are particular to country music. And that, I think, is what gives the song sort of crossover appeal. It's country enough to register as a country song or a song by an artist with interests in country music, but it's not country enough to be very alienating to someone who isn't here for the cowboy hats and guitars. So just like Mitski took the general idea of the cowboy and made it her own on Be the Cowboy, Kacey Musgraves, someone in the country world, is taking the ideas and the images of country and presenting them more universally to a pop audience. And that, I think, is what makes High Horse such a fun song. Another pretty high-profile artist, before I move on to some lesser-known country artists, is Miranda Lambert. She is one of 3 former members of the Pistolanis who has gone on to make really excellent country music. And a song that I think can appeal to listeners even outside the country world is Vice. Another vice, another call. The instrumentation on this song is pretty country, but it also leans in some weirder rock directions. I think there's some electric guitars and maybe synths in the background that feel more modern than the traditional country sort of instruments like acoustic guitars and drums. This is one of the older songs on the list. It came out in 2016 on her album The Weight of These Wings. I'm trying to keep the songs on this list pretty current because it's pretty easy to recommend like a Dolly Parton or Patsy Cline standard to a non-country fan and leave it at that. But a lot of non-country fans' contentions with country music tends to be specifically with modern country music. So I do want to present some options for people who want to listen to today's country music without feeling pushed away by typical country stylings. And this song, I think, fills that role pretty well because the idea of the song is fairly universal. Just like on High Horse or on Old Town Road. The idea of a vice is something that shows up in pretty much every genre of music. Just like on my first Carly Rae Jepsen video, I'll link it up here, where I talk about the song Too Much, the idea of a vice or of dependency or addiction is pretty universal to all genres of music. So this song is going to cover familiar ground no matter what type of music you're accustomed to listening to. It's funny, with the internal rhymes in the song, I could almost see it being like a ska song. If it were more up-tempo, it would probably be even poppier, but in the state that it's currently in, I would expect it would be pretty appealing to you even if you don't like country music, at least on the basis of its quality and of Miranda's performance, which is excellent on this song and on her other music. I'm going to continue my list with the remaining two members of the Pistol Annies. First, Angelina Presley. Her most recent album, Wrangled, came out in 2017, and it was one of my favorite albums of that year. And I have chosen two songs from that album. First is High School. This song is a little bit on the twangy side, but I think what's most broadly appealing about the song is the subject material, because I would imagine that most people have had the opportunity to go to high school, and the things that Angelina talks about in this song are, I think, pretty common to high schools around the US and probably in other countries as well. The ideas of prom and teen pregnancy come up, and the sort of awkwardness and resentment that a lot of people have about high school pops up on this song. So I think it's something that if you have been to high school or are in high school, you almost definitely will relate to. I would compare this song thematically to the early music of Kacey Musgraves, like the song Merry-Go-Round, where she criticizes this sort of small town life and the perspectives and traditions and the ways that it stifles people. But high school in particular, I think, is even more broadly appealing because while not everyone may be able to relate to the idea of a small town existence, the types of high school experiences she talks about in this song, I think, are pretty applicable to any high school in any region. And I talked before about that sort of cowboy attitude. Angelina's music does have that same sort of defiance and attitude that's really fun to listen to and can be really cathartic. The other song by Angelina Presley that I'm going to recommend is Bless My Heart. As you might know, the expression bless your heart, when used in some regions, is sort of backhanded, and that's exactly what Angelina is addressing on this song. Again, like high school, she has that sort of attitude. She says, "If you bless my heart, I'll slap your face," which again is so fun to listen to. This is a bit on the bouncier side compared to a song like High School or some of her more country-oriented songs like Wrangled. And the stereotypes and tropes that she engages with on this song, while particular to her experiences, do engage with the broader iconography of American media. And as the song goes on, she broadens it even further. She talks to this sort of stereotypical small-town parochial sort of sensibility and says eventually your small town bubble is going to burst and you're going to have to confront the real world, and if you don't confront the realities of our society and try to remedy them, it's going to come back to bite you. And I think that message elevates the song beyond just a sort of personal takedown to the point of actually having a social message. And that confrontation then isn't just against another individual, but against a sort of system of complacency. With that in mind, let's move on to the last remaining member of the Pistol Annies, and that's Ashley Monroe. She released her album Sparrow just last year, and again, it was one of my favorite albums of the year. My favorite song from that album is called Wild Love. Whereas some of the songs I've talked about before feel like they take place in a small town and are very local, this song feels dramatic and expansive and romantic. The strings on this song are very beautiful and separate it from traditional country fare. Her vocal delivery is very emotional and desperate, and like I talked about in some of my earlier videos, one of the strongest feelings that I think pop music can convey is desire or yearning, and here Ashley Monroe is saying that she wants wild love. So just like in a Carly Rae Jepsen song, her expression of desire becomes the dramatic thrust of the song and separates it from a sort of limited, specific, maybe bro country scenario where we're talking about trucks and farms and beer and parties, because here she expands the scope of the song to Barcelona and the Wild West, the sort of invocation of the Western and the expanse of the desert. So like I'll keep saying, even if you don't like country music, the strong emotion on this song and the beautiful romantic strings are something that I think will appeal to you. The other song from the album Sparrow that I'm going to recommend is called Hands on You. This song is thematically similar, I think, to Miranda Lambert's song Vice, where this time the desire is less for love and more for contact, where an illicit relationship acts as a sort of release of tension and of sadness. But this time, instead of regretting acting on this vice or this desire, Ashley's character regrets not acting on that desire. The lyrics on the song are really stunning. The idea of laying hands on someone can refer to violence, and I think that awareness sort of deepens the drama of the song, where she knows that had she engaged in this relationship, it would have been a sort of violence on herself. But even though she knows that, she still hasn't had an outlet for that desire, and she still feels that desire. And that's what drives the song and makes it so interesting. Next, I'm going to move on to an artist who has also received Grammy recognition. He was nominated for the Grammy for Album of the Year, and that's Sturgill Simpson. He fits more, I think, in the category of alt country or country rock, so I think his music should be appealing not only to pop fans, but also to fans of classic rock. In particular, for rock fans, I'm going to recommend his cover of In Bloom by Nirvana. At first, this song didn't even register to me as a Nirvana cover because it's so stylistically different. It starts out much mellower than the original, and then eventually moves into more aggressive, expressive territory. The beginning of the song, like some of his other music, feels sort of like a lullaby. It's very calm and serene and spacey. He's also not afraid to approach some more psychedelic stylings in his music that make it feel more dreamlike or maybe hallucinatory. His voice is also sort of throatier, I think, than some of the other singers on this list. His delivery is very distinctive, and as the song progresses, he throws in more belts and growls that lean more in the direction of something like rock or country rock. So if you like the original Nirvana song, I think you'll also enjoy this cover, because seeing how he has reinterpreted the lyrics and applied that to a very different sound is really interesting compared to the original. Another Sturgill Simpson song that I'm going to recommend also comes from his album A Sailor's Guide to Earth, and that is Welcome to Earth. This song also starts out more meditative and then has a sudden burst of energy, at which point horns come in a way that to me is reminiscent of 50s and 60s pop music. I could almost see this song being sung by like a 60s girl group. And in terms of subject matter, this song also leans more universal because it's from the perspective of a parent talking to his child and wishing he could be there through that child's whole life, which is, I think, a pretty universal feeling whether you're in the country world or not. And the song has some really great swells of instrumentation. There's some organ in the background and some really fun percussion, as well as the horns that I mentioned before. So this song isn't going to be your typical one man wearing a cowboy hat and playing the acoustic guitar. This is a very modern take on country that has influences from multiple genres, like I mentioned, traditional pop, but also soul and R&B and gospel, and I think will be enjoyable to you whether you are familiar with traditional country music or not. The last artist I'm going to talk about is Brandy Clark, another Grammy nominee. She's not as well known outside of the country world, but I think she has some music that would be really appealing to non-country fans. First, I'm going to talk about the song Girl Next Door from her album Big Day in a Small Town. The song to me sort of fits in the category of like a Carrie Underwood banger, or more broadly, feminist anthem. And like some of the other music on this list, it pushes back against some of the lifestyle traditions and tropes of the South and of country music. She says, if you want a sort of traditional woman, then you haven't found her in me. And something that I think is interesting is while the song does push back against some of the traditions of country music and its origins, it very much embraces that sort of cowboy spirit that I was talking about. This sort of spirit of independence and defiance and paving your own path. Girl Next Door has the same sort of confidence as Old Town Road by Lil Nas X. And the drop on the chorus is sort of reminiscent of the pop music of the early 2010s with dance drops, but here we get this wall of electric guitar sound. And in terms of energy and aggressiveness, on the other end of the spectrum, we have the song Hold My Hand from the album 12 Stories. I'm going to end the list with this song. It's a very contemplative ballad. I would almost compare it to something like Liability by Lorde, where it's just the singer alone wanting the company and comfort of another person and not getting it. Like I always talk about, desire is such a strong feeling in music, and this song captures that excellently. This song is just gorgeous. I think if you don't like country music, it's still enough of a pop ballad that you would probably enjoy it. And it's a nice counterpoint to some of the more defiant and cynical and sarcastic tone on some of the other songs on this list. So I hope that even if you're not a fan of country music, you enjoy these songs and maybe go check out some other country music or songs by these particular artists. If there are any country songs that you can think of that would appeal to people who aren't fans of country, leave them in the comments below. And for now, that's it. When I say ye, you say ha.